Very much for that. Natasha, how are you doing?
Hello. Yes, I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Good.
I've been really excited to have this call because you've been a member for UK Homes Network for quite a while now. I think you signed up within the first couple of months of us launching.
Yeah.
You were super early, and
Yeah.
since then we've had a couple of conversations, and it's been really interesting to learn what your business does and how you support clients because. I think I've got some sort of experience as to the kind of pain points that you actually help people with. And
Yeah.
for people that haven't come across property progressors, can you just sort of explain what it is that you do and how you support people?
Yeah, absolutely. So we specialize in sales progression. So sales progression is the part of the process once the estate agent has agreed the sale, all the way through to handing over the keys. So we're the glue that keeps all of the sales together throughout that process. I feel like that's a really simplified way of explaining it because it's a really complicated process and quite a roller coaster. But yeah, we deal with the transaction and once it's been agreed.
Yeah, glue is a perfect analogy because it's not only
Yeah.
the bit that keeps it together, it's also the messy bit.
Absolutely, yeah. We spoke the other day about the reason I use the word glue is because me and the team, I really feel like that is what we do. There's so many points throughout a transaction where a buyer's having a wobble or a seller's having a wobble. There's been bad survey report or, something's come up throughout the conveyancing. And us being there to talk to buyers and to talk to sellers on the phone, because we're always at our desk as sales progressors, we're not out of the office on appointments. So being able to talk to somebody point of them having that initial wobble and talking them back from a ledge, I feel like is such an important point because, I feel like if you don't catch people at the right time and you're not there as a voice to speak to and to reason with at the right time, if you leave somebody worrying about things overnight, I think that's when they start to talk to friends and family and people talk them out of buying or selling, if that makes sense. So that the word glue is such a big thing for me because that's absolutely what we do is communicate with everybody and keep that transaction glued together.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll move. I'm going to ask you about that sort of seed of doubt and how that can sort
Yeah.
of like grow into
Yeah.
something quite big in the transaction. But in
Yeah.
terms of how your business is set up and the way it works, so are you primarily there taking that stress and um that transaction process away from estate agents?
Yeah, absolutely. So traditionally, most estate agents would deal with sales progression. I read an article the other day, I think, that said that estate agents now are spending 54% of their time doing sales progression. So it's becoming more increasingly popular to either hire in-house sales progressors or outsource sales progression because it's becoming a really complicated part of the process. I remember 8 to 10 years ago, when I was an estate agent, we would be agreeing a sale and we'd be putting on the memorandum of sale, exchange within 8 to 10 weeks, or complete within 8 to 10 weeks. Whereas now, if you put that on a memorandum of sale and sent it to a solicitor, they'd just laugh at you because it's just not realistic. There's so many rules and regulations and complications that have come in over the last 8 to 10 years that have just really increased the transaction duration. So before you would have been looking at an average transaction duration of 12 weeks, whereas now I believe that's as high as 25 weeks.
What?
Um, yeah, average transaction duration 25 weeks in the UK.
Wow. Yeah. In my head, I'm like I think we're sort of similar sort of career in terms of when we started a state agency. I remember
Yeah,
telling people it was 6 to 8 weeks.
yeah,
Like 24 weeks has just blown my mind.
yeah.
So why is it taking so long?
It's a mixture of things. I think from what I understand, there's not enough. conveyancers qualifying, so there's not enough people going into that part of law, and it takes time to train conveyancers, you know. So I think that's part of an issue. I also feel like factory conveyancing is a bit of an issue. The cheap conveyancing, high caseload, you can't get hold of your conveyancer. I think that's a problem. But I also feel like there's been a lot of complexities that have arisen. You know, things like EWS1 and stuff like that has prolonged transactions. I feel like there's a lot more apartments being built now as well than houses. So, you know, when you're selling a leasehold property, you've got a managing agent that you have to raise inquiries with and go back and forth on that. So that tends to add an extra 3 to 4 weeks onto a transaction duration. So I think that there's a whole lot of things that come into increasing the transaction durations.
And I think you picked up on something there as well, is that if 54% of estate agents' time is on sales progression, they're not going out there basically bringing properties to the market. They're not, you know, hosting viewings and cracking on with the basics of what an estate agent should do. I mean,
Yeah,
and I think that's a lot to do with sort of financial resources and how much money is available. Because I
yeah,
worked in a estate agency, we would have a dedicated sales progressor in the office, which
yeah,
would allow us to go back out onto the road, and bring more properties to the market and just keep that cycle going. And if I remember that the sales progressor that we had decided that she wanted to pursue a career in conveyancing, so she left the role at estate agency, and all the listers, the valuers, the sales negotiators were all doing their own sales progression, and
yeah,
we hated it because it was just
yeah,
so, because obviously we're sort of trying to do the sales element. We want to be back out on the road,
yeah,
and then when you're dealing with the sort of customer aspect of it, the customer care aspect, it feels like you're not hitting your sales targets, or you're not hitting, you know, the
yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when I was an estate agent, and I worked for a corporate company, we had like a really structured diary. So the company that I work for, we used to have sales progression for 2 hours on Tuesday morning and 2 hours on a Thursday morning. That was eight 8 years ago that structure was in place. And it was sufficient at that time. That was more or less sufficient. You would always get the odd case that a problem comes up and you have to get involved outside of your sales progression hours, but that was more or less sufficient. But these days it's not, and I think, you know, fall through rates at the moment. I don't have an exact figure, but from my research, it's between 30 to 35% fall through rates.
right.
And that increases with the longer a transaction goes on for. Um, so with the fall through rate being 30 to 35%, our fall through rate is 17.8%. And I really believe the reason for that is because we're always at our desks and we're always available. And like I said earlier, we can speak to people at the right point and talk them down from their ledge. Whereas, you know, having both of us haven't experienced it as an estate agent. If you were going into a viewing or a valuation and all of a sudden you quickly checked your phone before you go in and you can see that something's going wrong on one of your deals, but you have to go into your appointment. And over that next hour, you know, in the back of your mind, you're thinking to yourself, am I going to leave this valuation and everything's fallen apart? Because you have to do the appointment, right? And I think that's the main thing. Obviously, me and the team were all fantastic at our job, and you know, there's a lot of negotiation and experience that goes behind being able to talk somebody off of the ledge. But you know, just being available, I think that's such a crucial point at the moment. So yeah.
100%. I'm a really emotional person. Like if I
Yeah.
get a text or an email come through that a sale's about to fall through, and then I've got to go and try and bring someone onto the market, nah,
Yes.
it's not happening. They'll be able
Yeah.
to see the stress in my face.
You're
It's
distracted.
yeah,
It's in the back of your mind. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. That's such an interesting point. I think obviously with the fall through rate on average, that's a third. of all
Yeah,
transactions, potentially
yeah,
over a third of all transactions are falling through. In
yeah.
your opinion, why do you think it's so high?
Um, transactions, look, I think transactions are taking so long. Um, we touched on why they're taking so long, but I've got data, and I'll send this over to you actually to see if you can share it on the network, or I can share it. Um, a chart that shows a direct correlation between the transaction duration and the fall through rate. And
Right.
it starts at 1 week and it goes all the way up to, I think, 50 weeks. And the fall through rate just goes like this. The longer transaction goes on for, you lose momentum, people lose interest, they start looking on the property portals again, if there's anything else out there, you know. And I think, emotions and family, speaking to people, I think the longer it goes on for, the bigger the problem, really, because people just ruminate on those feelings. So the faster you can get a transaction through, in my opinion, the better. And I think there's lots of things that we could be doing as an industry to tackle this that we're not doing at the moment, in terms of transaction durations, because I think the focus, especially in estate agency, the focus is listing the properties, getting them under offer, listing the properties, getting them under offer. But the fall through rates really need to be addressed.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you mentioned that obviously you're sat at your desk, they're ready to receive a call or actively, proactively making calls with people, and that's the reason why your fall through rate is so low. Do you
Yeah.
think that there's any sort of other elements to that? Because
Yeah.
we mentioned about seeds of doubt, and that's something that I used to experience as an estate agent. And we've previously had a laugh about this. You know, you literally can tell when someone turns up to view a property, you can almost smell it on them that they are
Yeah.
going to cause a problem at some point down the line, that
Yeah.
there's going to be an issue there. I don't know what it is. It's just agents have a sixth sense for,
Yeah.
buyers that are going to cause issues. And
Yeah.
I think it's because we've seen so many of them. But
Yeah.
what is it about property progresses that is able to affect those levels of doubt that do creep in?
Yeah, so I think I've probably not given the team enough credit by saying this, just because we're at our desk next to the phone all the time. The team are incredibly experienced. So each of our team members has got a minimum of 10 years experience. And as you said, having that experience, you gain that intuition about, okay, they've read my message, but they haven't responded. It's not like them, you kind of, you do just get that, like you say, that sixth sense. So, and you deal with all different types of personalities. So I think it's just having that experience of being able to go, right, okay, they've received their survey. I've not heard from them since they've received their survey. Let's give them a follow-up. It's that experience and being on the ball, and tackling things head on.
Right. And have you got sort of examples of where that's happened? Like, are you working on any cases at the minute or any in the past where, sort of people have raised sort of red flags and you've had to sort of step in and sort it out?
Yeah, I mean, there's been loads actually. I mean, a classic example. I remember I had somebody that had sent us a survey report, and on this survey report, the surveyor created the report and sent it over to the buyer, and hadn't called the buyer to talk them through the report. And I think, especially as a first time buyer. This was a first time buyer, from another country as well. So they didn't have a lot of experience in the process. And to receive the survey report in writing can be quite scary. Um, so yeah, when he received the report, there was, lots of things, because part of the survey is the surveyors are there to highlight any issues with the property. But usually you get a traffic light system with a survey. So you get the reds, the ambers, and the greens. And on this particular report, the majority of issues that were highlighted were amber. Um, Anybody with experience will know that amber is more or less part of the general maintenance of a property, clearing the pipes and just things like that, clearing the rainwater pipes, things like that. It's one that always comes up, rainwater pipes. And we always have buyers that say to us, "Oh, well, the seller needs to get the rainwater pipes cleared," and it's just general maintenance of a property, you know. Um, but what we usually say is when we come up against red items, that's something that we will discuss and we will talk to the seller about. So specifically, we had one whereby the buyer was worried about all of the ambers and all of the reds. So had that conversation with him, explained what the ambers are in a bit more detail than I am now. But I think having that, being approachable and friendly as well, not as if you're bullying a buyer into dropping things, just explaining to them why those ambers are there on that report, and then going on to the reds and saying, look, okay, we've got a few slipped roof tiles. My suggestion would be, let's get a roofer to go and have a look, and we'll get some quotes. And usually what we do is we get a buyer and a seller to get quotes. We compare notes. It's never as bad as it seems on the survey. And usually something, a buyer receiving that survey report, you can imagine a first-time buyer, having palpitations when they receive that report because they've already invested money into buying this property. And then having spoken to me, they then understand it a little bit more. But what I do find is that's a situation that we help because we got the quotes, everything was overcome. It ended up exchanging and the buyer left us a lovely review. But what we do find is that when surveyors call buyers after they've created the report, buyers understand a lot more of what they're reading, because sometimes these are 150-page reports and they can seem really scary. So yeah, that's a huge thing for me is buyers looking at surveyors. We'll call them and we'll talk them through the report, guide them through the report once they've sent it over.
Yeah, I was smiling at that roof tiles thing because I used to get a call at least once a month going, I'm pulling out of the sale, they need a new roof. And I go, right, okay. You just had your survey back, have you, Mr. Jones? And he go, yeah.
Yeah,
I go, have they put a category 2 on the roof? And he goes, yeah. I goes,
yeah,
right, we'll get a roofer out. It's probably a few slip tiles. But yeah, I always liken it to the fact that a surveyor is not a gas engineer. So when they go out
yeah,
to even a brand new build, if they signed off that boiler and that boiler blows up in the next 6 months and kills everyone inside, then
yeah,
that surveyor is liable. Um,
yeah,
and it's exactly the same that they can't sign it off. It's basically a list of disclaimers for the mortgage lender that they're not
yeah,
not going to get in trouble
exactly.
for.
There's so many caveats on surveys that are caveats on every single survey, that worry people. And I wish surveyors could explain that, but after every survey you get a request for the boiler service history and EICR, which are valid requests,
Yeah.
and I'd even go as far as saying that my view, and some people will agree, some people will disagree. My view is that really vendors should be getting a gas safety check, an EICR, and potentially a survey with a pricing list before they list the property, because it's always asked for. And this goes back to what I said earlier about, as an industry, we could be doing more to reduce transaction times and reduce fall through rates, because if you have a seller that's got a survey ready, all of their, if they've ever had an extension, they've got all of their building regulations, planning docs, they've got everything, fencer certificates, EICR, gas safety certificate. If you've got a vendor that's got all of those things prepared pre-market before it goes onto the market, then you've got everything to present the buyer. And all of those things are items that take weeks on the transaction side of things. They take
Mm.
weeks, getting a survey booked in, having the survey, negotiating back and forth on the survey, getting an EICR done, getting a gas safety certificate done, um, finding your building regulations, all of those things. It's solicitors that go back and forth. And if you had that, I haven't tested it, but I theorise you'd probably shave about 5 to 6 weeks off of a transaction.
100%. Yeah. Because if it's particularly with the fencer certificate, it's like
Yeah,
they'd phone up like the person that installed the windows, or they'd then get an indemnity policy and all this stuff. But if you spent a couple of weeks
yeah,
before you got to market actually putting it on,
yeah,
it's going to save you so much time.
yeah,
And I think it's like sort of that current theme is that what you're trying to do is take away any doubt from that buyer
Yeah,
that
yeah,
anything's going to go wrong within that transaction. So if
yeah.
you've taken the time to Are you enjoying this webinar preview? Well, if you are, head on over to the UK Homes Network app, where as a premium member, you'll be able to watch this video back in its full version. You'll also be able to access all of our webinars from a range of industry experts and thought leaders from across the property industry. Not only that, as a premium member, you'll have access to our exclusive deal sharing groups, where you'll be able to post your property requirements or even access some of the deals that our members are sharing within the platform. You'll also get a range of exclusive discounts from our friends and partners at UK Homes Network. Just head on over to the UK Homes Network app by downloading UK Homes Network in your app store. Creating a profile takes a couple of seconds, and you'll be able to network with thousands of property professionals from across the country. I look forward to seeing you there.